Good morning or afternoon, wherever you may be watching. Thank you for joining us on this SAG-AFTRA live stream on YouTube. To stay informed about all of our live stream and video events, we invite you to subscribe to our channel. You can go ahead and do that right now. Today, we present a President's Task Force on Education, Outreach, and Engagement live stream, Impressive Auditions with David Dean Bottrell. The presentation will begin momentarily. If you have questions that you'd like to direct to today's guests, please email pteoe@sagaftra.org. That's pteoe@sagaftra.org. As a reminder, today's program is being recorded and you can watch the replay right here on SAG-AFTRA's YouTube, along with much more great content. I also want to recognize and thank our captioner for providing closed captioning for today's event. And with that, please give a warm welcome to today's host, SAG-AFTRA President, Gabrielle Carteris.
Thank you, Pamela. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Well, we have absolutely a wonderful guest. He's somebody who's going to be talking to us with a topic that I hope will be, I know will be beneficial to all of us. Before I start, though, I do want to go and take a moment to introduce SAG-AFTRA's Executive Vice President, Rebecca Damon. Hello, Rebecca. How are you?
Hi, Gabrielle. I'm great.
Good. Thanks for being here. So
Excited.
I know it's going to be good, right? So this is really, it's really wonderful to have everyone here. This is a program and a discussion that as members and artists, we actually all want. We want it. We appreciate it because it helps us to hone in on the craft, our craft, and helps us to make our skills even stronger. So continuing in this moment of craziness to be able to learn and grow and perfect our work is really at all times is meaningful, but particularly at this time. So today we have with us David Dean Bottrell. He's our special guest, a veteran actor, and he's a teacher. He's bringing us his popular online workshop. It's filled with innovative, I'm very excited to see innovative and meaningful tips on how we as actors can make the most of every audition, whether we self-tape or we do it in person. So this is actually an opportunity to make a great impression and have the best chance of landing those jobs, which I know will be more and more plentiful as we move forward. So just to give you a little background on David, he is not only a great teacher, but he's also an actor. He's played guest roles on many, I should say, shows. I'll just list a few of those: Modern Family, The Blacklist, Law and Order, SUV, Mad Men, Longmire, Castle, Criminal Minds, going on and on. He also has performed theater from second stage to working at the public. And he has also, so he's quite prolific, been a columnist for Backstage.com, written off-Broadway plays and screenplays for many Hollywood studios. David actually created, for 3 years, co-produced the critically acclaimed Sci-Fi LA, the Los Angeles Science Fiction One Day Play Festival, which was really a great festival. And his first book, Working Actor, was published in 2019. His current one-man show, David Dean Bottrell Makes Love, a one-man show, was released as an audiobook by Random House earlier this year. Thank you for joining us, David. It's so wonderful to have you here. Please take it away.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Hello, everybody. It's a great pleasure for me to be here today. Some of you I might have encountered in some of the other seminars I've taught for SAG-AFTRA. I've taught them in Los Angeles as well as New York. So some of you may have seen those. This is going to be a little bit different today. First of all, those presentations are quite a bit longer. So I'm going to shorten things up a bit today because we're going to try to do some constructive stuff in an hour. I just want to sort of put out a couple of little disclaimers at the top. Silly though they may be, I'm just going to sort of share these things with you. I've been an actor for a long time. Pretty soon I'm going to hit my 4th decade of being an actor. And I love being an actor. I'm really proud to be an actor, and I'm very passionate about it. And I don't think I could do this job if I wasn't passionate about it. And I don't think I could teach it either if I didn't really care deeply about it. I think it was really an important thing to do well. And sometimes when I am talking about acting and auditioning and some of the things I'm going to be talking about very shortly, in my passion, sometimes my language gets a little colorful. So I'm not vulgar and I don't call people names or anything like that, but just sometimes occasionally something will sort of happen where a certain word may come out of my mouth just out of my enthusiasm for what I'm talking about. So I just wanted to put that out there in case that was a problem for anybody, because you can it's not too late. It's a free seminar. You can bail anytime you want. Not that you probably would. The second thing I want to say is anything I'm going to say today is entirely my opinion. It's based on my experience, which, as I said, I've been at this for a while. And I also, in my career, I stepped out of acting for a little while and worked as a writer. I did some producing. I've done some directing. I've been on both sides of the casting table, both in front of it and behind it, and facing the very difficult problem of casting that perfect actor that you want. So I've had a little bit of experience with that. And the other thing I wanted to say before we get started is I'm going to tell you what this isn't. This isn't a magic formula that I'm going to give you that is going to be something that works every time for every situation. Auditioning is acting, and acting is fluid, and we have to adapt to situations as they happen. And right now, we're adapting to a really big one, which is everything has gone online to self-taped auditions. And usually what I talk about in my audition seminars are auditions where you come into the room. And a lot of what I have learned there is still applicable in a self-taped audition. So I'm going to be talking about that, but just kind of keep in mind that nobody has all the answers on all this. I'm going to share with you everything I know that I think is sort of universally true about auditioning in general. And I'm going to invite you to take notes. Please don't record this. If I would be grateful if you didn't. There's SAG-AFTRA is going to put up a recording of some stuff that's going to be on there. But I'm kind of leery of things that are not sort of that are not within the parameters of the union. Okay. So anyway, to come back to this, I'm going to tell you some things that I think are largely universally true. And so if you want to, and I usually have this like 1 through 10 checklist. I don't so much have that today. I'm also not a particularly polished seminar giver. So I'm just consider this as colleague talking to colleague. I know also that I'm talking to a very broad range of the membership. I'm sure that there are some people in the room who are probably just starting out their career. And so there may be some things that may be a little bit mysterious to you, or some things that maybe it would be helpful if I reminded you about. Other people are going to be, well established in their career and just sort of, feeling a little frustrated by the current situation, and maybe a little frustrated with how auditions have been going. And hopefully some of the things I can say may be just a way of reframing it a little bit, that experience and the skills needed for it. And other people may be, feeling a little stalled in their career right now, and they're looking for ways to kind of make sure that their auditions pop, because obviously that's the fastest way to get your career going, is to audition well. So let me start out. And by the way, I'm going to very awkwardly be looking at my notes from time to time because, like I said, this is not really what I do for a living. So I have to kind of look back every once in a while. And I'm going to start by telling you something that is kind of a weird one, I guess. People find it a little strange when I say this initially, but this is true about all auditions, including taped auditions, self-taped auditions. And here it goes. Auditioning is never about getting the job. And I say that because obviously we all want to get a job. All of us do. And so when an audition comes up, there is that sort of energy that comes with it to say, wow, a job, I'm going to book this job, book this job. And weirdly, if you take that into the audition, into the taping even of your audition, it shows a little bit. It can sometimes take you off of the very job that you're going to be hired to do, which is to fully be this person that they're looking for. Now, this might be a good moment for me to talk a little bit about some of what's happened with, self-tapes. A lot of things are changing right now, and I, for one, don't know what it's going to be like in the future. I think a lot of companies, for instance, I'm talking about like company, not acting, not the acting world, but just the regular business world, are discovering that it's actually less expensive to not have to rent office space. So I don't know. We may be looking at self-taping for quite a long time. It may become the new normal. And so because of that, we sort of are missing some of the components we used to have, which was to walk into a space and meet the casting director, have some kind of personal exchange with them so they got to know us a little bit as a person, and then, adjust to the reader and actually do our audition in a live space in real time. And now we're going to be doing something a little bit different, and are doing something a little bit different. And the thing that I want to start out with is I want to assure you about something. And that's about doing self-tapes and about just doing auditions, period. And this is my belief. Pardon me. I have a bad allergy, so I'm going to be clearing my throat a bit today, and I apologize in advance for that. This is what I believe about auditioning. I don't believe it when people sort of say, "Oh, take this audition class and do, let me give you a list of these, things that you do, or you take my class and I'll guarantee you'll book every job you go for." I don't believe any of that. I think that auditioning is acting. If you are an actor and you have been acting your whole life, you can audition. What I will say is, in my opinion, auditioning is just acting under less than ideal circumstances. And self-taping is less than ideal in a lot of ways. I'll begin with, in any kind of audition has its parameters, but they certainly do in self-tapes, in that I don't have the same freedom to move around in the space. I've got to stay relatively simple and small and stationary. I probably won't be auditioning with another actor. In some cases now we can get our friends to hop on, and I'm going to talk about that in a second, and be our partner. But sometimes we're having to work under very, very constricted circumstances, and also with not a lot of time to prepare the material. But all that said, I'm going to tell you that the best way to come at this, in my opinion, is to come at it as an acting job. As opposed to thinking I'm taping an audition here, I come at it with the opinion of, we're shooting my coverage. This is me, and I'm just doing some acting here today. And yes, I'm going to have to use my imagination a little bit, but it's going to be okay. I can do this. Now, let's talk about the realities of a self-tape. There are a lot of people talking about, I have to have the powder blue background. I have to have a green background. I have to have a light ring. I have to buy a camera. I have to buy a microphone. There's a lot of that going on. And listen, again, I'm going to come down to a matter of opinion, but this is my experience with this. I booked a couple of jobs off of self-tapes, and I was put on hold for a big kind of network, recurring on a big network show, off of the worst self-tape I've ever done in terms of technical stuff. Like, it looked like shit, but my acting was pretty good in it. And I actually wound up being, when I turned in, I was so embarrassed because I'd had no time to do it and I just had to throw it together. But oddly enough, I was able to act it pretty well. And I wound up being put on hold, and I was on hold for a bit for that. And that one didn't work out. But the others I have done have not been done with all of these requirements. They were done either against a wall or with the existing lighting that I had. There are some things, that I will say about self-tapes. If you can invest in all that, great. But if you do have a problem and you can't really necessarily set up all of that stuff, it's kind of a matter of common sense, which is, obviously, you have to be seen. They have to be able to see you. They have to be able to see your eyes. You have to have enough light so they can sort of see what's going on in your eyes. You have to be heard and understood. And your background cannot be in competition with you. It can't be anything weird, or it can't be too crazy cluttered or all that. But I have self-taped with, some very average looking furniture behind me in the background, and it did not draw attention away from me. Okay. So that's my opinion. Now, other people may say something different, but I have actually booked jobs where there was kind of a, neutral, not super interesting background back there. But I didn't have all that stuff, and I didn't have a light ring. I'm actually not a big fan of light rings because, at least with me, I usually wear my glasses, so that presents a problem. And also sometimes if I happen to lean in close, the light ring picks up in my eyes and it looks like I'm from another planet. So I'm not a big fan of that. I prefer like a couple of lights, whether they're like LED lights or whatever, or whether they're two lamps or whatever I have in hand, like one on this side and one on this side, so you can't see them, but so that I'm lit from two sides and that they can see what they need to see. Do be careful about, I've actually seen some self-tapes that were so dim, like the light was like behind the actor somewhere, that I couldn't really see them very well. And so that's a problem. What I would say is my goal is always to be, more interesting than my background. So that once I start acting, hopefully that's what they're paying attention to. They're paying attention to me. Do I need to make it look exactly like it would look like if it was taped in a casting director's office? I personally don't worry about that as much. Some people really, really want that. And and again, there's some casting directors who will say, yes, it must look a certain way. Others are a little more flexible about that. But just to sort of, common sense, if you don't want like the potted plant to be coming out of the top of your head or anything, or for your dog to walk through the frame while you're trying to tape this scene. So just common sense things I think are okay. And again, the emphasis is always you. It's you and what's happening. Okay. Now, for me, for my self-tapes, I self-tape using my iPhone, which I have in front of me. And then I have usually some friend of mine on Zoom who is my reader. And there are times when it is really very difficult to get that all lined up in such a way that my eye line is really going to work with the Zoom and the iPhone and all of it working. So sometimes I have to work opposite a Post-it. I'm acting toward a Post-it. And before I came on to do this today, a few days ago, I emailed a few friends of mine who are casting directors and asked for some advice. And one of the things that came back from them was just to remind people, especially if you're sort of separated from a human being, like what I just described, where you're sort of acting to like a little piece of paper or whatever, don't forget there has to be a human being there in your imagination. That because if you, like I said, auditioning is acting, and acting is responding to a real person. And if that real person isn't there, it's up to us to create them and allow them, whoever they are, whoever this character is, to change us during the course of this audition. And everything that they're going to want to know about you in this role has got to occur on camera between action and cut. They have to see it happening. So even if you're working with a piece of paper, you have to imagine in your mind that there is someone wonderful there. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Some wonderful person, some wonderful actor, some wonderful character in front of you that you can work off of. Okay, so that there's a human connection that is present, and that you're not just sort of faking it, that you believe it. Because if you believe it, we believe it. Okay, now let me talk about something else here. Okay, I know this is like old school stuff here, so forgive me if this sounds a little too simple, but in my experience, both as a teacher and a coach and as an actor as well, and it's listen, especially in an audition, listen. And you got to listen like an actor listens, which means you got to be so available that whatever comes at you, whatever piece of information happens, whatever the scene is, whether it's an argument or a negotiation or whatever it is, that the way in which you listen, particularly when the other character is speaking, has got to be free of any distractions. It's got to be, you got to drop any force field or any kind of resentment we have or bitterness we have about the business or whatever. We got to be very pure in this moment of listening. And we have to let whatever just came at us create the energy and the desire to say that next line. And I know I know you're saying, I already know that. I went to acting class. I can't tell you how many times in my experience of watching people audition, that gets lost. And I understand why, because there's pressure. on us. And when we are under pressure, both in life and when we're acting, sometimes listening is the first thing that goes out the window, because I think we're trying to protect the work that we prepared. And so we become a little locked in, and we sort of have it's kind of pre-decided in a way how we're going to play this scene. And some of that wonderful spontaneity that comes from truly listening gets lost. So I just want to tell you that especially for camera, especially for a self-tape, make sure that you are truly available for what is happening in that scene. Now, which brings me to the next thing. When I was a young actor and I first started auditioning, period, I had this kind of misconception about auditioning. And I thought that my job, when I went into audition, particularly if it was some casting director I didn't know or something, my audition was to show them that I was brilliant, that I was a brilliant actor, and that I could play all of these emotions in the 3 pages that I had to read with. And when that changed, when I realized really what they wanted from me, what casting directors wanted, I started to book work. And what that came down to was, do I understand what's happening in this scene? And can I make that happen? And again, and this comes down to something as simple as the word action. And obviously, you know, I'm sure you know this as well. And I'm sorry if I'm saying things to people who they think, well, I know that. But I just want to remind you, in the pressure of auditioning and the speed with which we have to prepare, don't forget action. When a director calls action, I believe that is what she or he means, meaning they want to point their camera at something that is happening. It's something that is going on. And that has to be going on from the time the camera starts. So that means I have to start that job before the camera's turned on, that something is going on with me. And then I'm going to engage with somebody, and then some more things are going to be happening, but I'm going to be attempting to do something. And then the key word there is attempting, because what we're going to see in this scene is what we see in almost every scene, you know, and it's, again, particularly important in an audition. Ever since the Greeks up to anything that you're watching on Netflix right now, scenes are basically the same, which is somebody wants something and something goes wrong. It could be a relatively small thing. It could be a great big thing. Something could be wrong right from the get-go, or it may start to shift and change. As a matter of fact, I'm sure it will shift and change if it's a decent scene. Now, something's going to come up that's going to be news to you, or you're going to be creating something that's going to cause a problem for the other person, and then they're going to let you know. But there's going to be a bump in the road. And so it behooves us to pay attention to the bump, to realize what I came in here to do. If I came in here to ask for money, if I came in here to get respect, if I came in here to looking for sex, or if I came in here to try to trick somebody or deceive them in some way, that's got to be in my mind. It's got to be in my presence. It's got to be part of what I'm doing. It has to be recognizable what I'm doing. And then something's going to go wrong. And that's got to be recognizable too, so that they can see something happened to me. And then now I'm going to try something new. I'm going to try to adjust. I'm going to try to go around that roadblock. I'm going to go over it or under it or anything I can think of. And the other character is probably not going to help me out that much. But how do you know that moment when it happens? And I will say, if you listen, you'll hear it. It's right there in the writing. It's been done for us. The writing is so great because it's the blueprint. It's the blueprint out of which we're going to make this human experience. And again, we're going to make this human experience happen between the time the camera goes on and it goes off. They're going to see something happen. They're going to see an interchange of some kind. Now, I'm saying all of this because, believe me, in the world of self-tapes, it's very important that you prep it. Like you gotta like step up and really do your actor homework in a big way, because the industry has changed. And again, this is my opinion, okay? But since I began until now, it's a different beast. And at the beginning of this, I think the auditioning process was a little more about process, actually. And you could go in and expect to receive a little direction. And you could go in with some pages in your hand that you could sort of glance down from time to time and do all that. And now I don't think that's so much on the table anymore, because especially when all they have is this piece of tape. The piece of tape's got to be, for lack of a better word, I'm going to say complete, meaning it has to look like it can go on the air, which means you do want to be totally off book. You do want to have worked on it and applied your considerable skill as an actor to it so that it is alive and it doesn't in any way resemble, my line, your line, my line, your line. Our job as actors is to make the lines disappear so that when people watch us, they're watching a human interchange of some kind. Okay. All right. So let me keep going. Otherwise, I'm going to run out of time. This is the awkward part where I try to turn the page. Okay. Now, this is something else that I think is a universal truth about auditioning, which is, all the stuff that I learned in acting class was wonderful, and it was so pure, and it was terrific. And I learned a lot from it, and I still carry all of that skill with me. I hope I do anyway. I try to. But I also know that I'm in the entertainment business. So the person who's going to get this job that I'm auditioning for is going to have to do something that draws people in, that is entertaining, that is interesting or heartbreaking or terrifying or whatever the material calls for. But whatever it is, I've got to use what I've got to offer as an actor, and I've got to shine in this. So I've got to make this material work for myself. Now, one of the things that's coming up shortly, but I might as well jump to it now, is it comes back to not necessarily trying to get a job, but to do this well. And I can tell you that in my career, a couple of times, I've gotten, for a while there, I was on a little bit of a roll doing all these very cool character roles on television shows and really kind of cool shows too. I was really grateful to get them. But how it happened was I would get this audition and I would look at the material and I would think, oh my God, I'm wrong for this. I'm never going to get this. And then what I would think is, well, you know what? What if you did get this? What if this was just offered to you and you had to shoot it tomorrow? How would you do this? How would you take this material and make it work for you as a person? And I'm going to give you a couple of quick examples of this. I had an audition for one of those procedural shows, criminal procedural shows. And the role was just sort of a bureaucrat. There really wasn't anything too special about it. It was mostly just information. And I hadn't read for this casting director before. They were new to me. And I thought, I don't want to go in, they can give this role, anybody can do this. Any actor could do this. This is like any actor over 40 can play this role. They just need somebody to sort of be the guy in charge and say shit. And I thought, I'm not going to be super memorable in this audition. I would like to be. I don't think I'm going to book it because it's 1,000,000 to 1. They could pick any flavor in the rainbow and they could get it for this role. So instead, I'm going to look at this role and I'm going to treat it as an audition to show the casting director what I do well. And so I turned it into a little bit of a character part. And I found reasons, which were in the text, they were right there, for this guy to be a little nervous. And so I kind of played him as this kind of very nervous guy who was trying to not look nervous in this interrogation. And I went into the audition, and in this case, it was not a self-taped audition, it was a live one. And everybody laughed. And I thought, okay, I know that wasn't a funny scene, but I'm still glad I did that because I showcased my ability as an actor. And I thought next time they'll call me back for something that's a little more interesting. And as it turned out, they liked that take so much that they hired me. And I say that because I then did that for the next 2 jobs that I auditioned for, when I looked at the material and thought, this is not really me. This is not really the kind of shit that I do. But so I'm going to make a simple, slight turn to make it work for me. because this is, after all, my audition. So, I could go in and try to, like, one guy was this very sleazy, kind of amateur pornographer. And it was very clear that, it was meant to be this kind of guy, and I don't really do that. That's not really I'm much nerdier than that. So that was the take I took on it, was this, once again, this person who was very nerdy and very nervous about, like, asking if I could maybe photograph you. Yeah, it was just, I did the way I would do it. And once again, I got that job because nobody else did that. And I did it because it worked for me as an artist. Now, if you are a younger actor, I understand that sometimes that's a little tricky to do. It's a little tricky you may not know yourself super well yet as an artist. But I just wanted to put out there that if we are trying to sort of match the character description as written, sometimes it's like a piece of clothing doesn't quite fit. So we have to alter it a little bit to make it work, because if we're not really bringing our human selves to it and making it human, then it's not going to look great, particularly on tape. Okay. Now, I'm going to talk about something else, which brings me to, again, something that I think is super important to keep in mind for auditioning, period, and particularly for self-tapes. If we were all live in a room, what I would do is I would ask, people, show of hands, for people to tell me what the definition of an audition is. And usually I get a lot of different answers. Sometimes people say job interview, and some people say, I don't know, but a chance to inhabit this character or whatever. And I'm just going to tell you what a change that I made in my thinking about auditioning that really helped me and helped me to book more work, and work that I liked, really interesting work that I wanted to do. And that was, I came to treat auditioning not as any sort of test of my abilities, because I'm a professional member of SAG-AFTRA. I'm a professional actor. I actually believe that I do know what I'm doing. So consequently, when I do an audition, my take on it is I am offering you a free sample of my work. That's it. It's a free sample of what I do. And this is my take on the material. This is what, if you hire me, unless told otherwise, this is what I'm going to do when we shoot this next week or next month or whenever we do it. This is it. This is what I'm planning on doing. It's not going to be better than this. It's not going to be worse than this. It's this thing you just saw. This is going to be it. But in that process, when you get in front of that camera, the best way to make the best impression that you're going to make is to play that role in a way that fits you, and play it truthfully, and play it with, play it with importance. Okay. And I'm actually going to talk about that in a second as well, because it's also very important for self-tapes. Okay. Here's one. This kind of ties into what I just said. Enjoy yourself. I know that sounds weird. I imagine that sounds weird to some of your ears. I sometimes encounter, fellow actors and peers, and sometimes I encounter students who'll go, "Oh my God, I have an audition today. I have an audition today." And I think, well, that's good news. That's actually good news. That means you get to act today. You get to do a little acting today. So go out there and enjoy it. Have fun doing it. There is a quality that comes across, even if we're playing something kind of sad or mean or just, upsetting somehow. There's a quality that carries when you see an actor who really loves to work. I don't know about any of you, but my auditions have been not as plentiful as they once were lately. And I had a self-tape I was doing last week, and I had a reader, and I started having the best time because the character was this kind of drunken mess of a person. And I started having the best time doing it. And I said, let's do it again. Let's do another take. And I realized after a certain point that I had 4 takes I could have sent in by that time, but I was loving doing it so much. And that little spark, it changes things. It's like if you want to hire an electrician or a plumber or an actor, whoever it may be, I can tell you that you want the person who likes their work. And that little spark shows up. So I just want to say it's important It even shows up in your slate if you're happy to be there. Okay. All right. Now I'm also going to just quickly talk about camera technique. And I know that all of you are SAG-AFTRA people, so obviously you have worked and all that. And I'm not trying to talk down to anybody, but I just want to remind somebody, or not somebody, but remind anybody who this might get a little slippery for. When I first came into this work, I came in as a stage actor, and I didn't quite grasp the difference at first. And then fortunately, I had some very good people who helped me out to understand it, which was that camera, like when we're working in theater, there's a third party involved. There's us, and the other actor, but there's also the audience, and they're a big part of what's going on. They're the reason we're there. Is we're doing this play or the scene for the audience. We're enacting this for the audience, and some part of our brain is aware of them. We have to wait for them, when they laugh. Sometimes we just have that feeling that they're not being very attentive, so we really have to work harder to tell that story. We adjust to them because we're artists and we're sensitive to that kind of stuff. And when you work for camera, even in a self-tape, there has to be, you have to completely separate from that. Any sense that you're doing this for anybody. Even in acting class, when we do a scene in acting class, even just from a film or TV show, we're kind of like doing it in front of a bunch of people, and they are always in the same place, and they're the kind of audience, and we're on some defined stage area. And in camera work, we're in a 365-degree world. And when you are working with another actor in camera or working with your reader in an audition, it's very important that you achieve intimacy, meaning there's nobody else there. That's really kind of the art of camera work, is that there's nobody there but the two of you. No one's seeing this, no one's hearing this, but the two of you. If that's, or maybe there's more of you in the scene, maybe there's three of you, or whatever's happening. But there's got to be that sense that that intimacy. I'm going to leave it at intimacy. I'm going to say that there has to be an intimacy between you and the other person that is devoid of sending your performance anywhere, up to the balcony or even to the camera. The camera always comes to you. It always finds you. Now, the cool part about camera work is that there's something we can do in camera work that's a little tough to do on stage, which is terribly subtle things. The camera is, when I first took my first camera workshop, I'll just back up, tell you this fast anecdote. It was a long time ago. And the guy that I went to was terrible. He gave the worst advice. And he said things like, the camera is like a lie detector, and it can tell when you're telling a lie, and it can tell when you're being false, and don't ever play a false moment. And it was so intimidating. And later, what I learned was it's a tool, and it's not their tool, it's my tool. So if I want to play something relatively subtle or layered, that there are a couple of things going on with me, that camera assists me in doing it. It is so attentive to me. It's like it's my biggest fan. That's the best way to think about it. It's your biggest fan. And if there's something going on while you're talking about one thing but thinking about another, or you're beginning to realize that there's something wrong here, or you're beginning to figure out what the situation is, or whatever those little things are that are multi-layered, you can play moments like that on camera. And as long as the camera can see your eyes and your face and, see you breathe and all that, hear your voice, it'll know. The camera will know. It's really happening. The camera will see it. I hope that makes sense to everybody. I almost asked you, hey, does that make sense? But you obviously can't tell me that. So I'm going to assume that it did. Okay, let me talk about something else. I'm again just going to quickly, this is usually where I talk about production, but in the world of self-tapes, let me just adjust that a little bit. The beauty of self-tapes is, as long as you have a reader who's willing to hang around for a while, you could do them over and over and over until you get the take you want. And I am known. I ask my readers, hey, are you okay to hang around for an hour or so? Or in some cases, I'll offer to slip them $20 or something, so that I don't feel pushed to knock it out right away, because I do want that freedom to try some things out. most of us have an idea of a scene when we first read it, but then the doing of it that's where that's what matters. So when I start doing it, if I detect that it's maybe a little flat, or this feels really super awkward, I have the opportunity to retool it. Or if I feel like, oh, the beginning of it went pretty well, but the end of it really, farted out, there's a chance to go back and do it again. That's a luxury that exists with self-tapes that does not exist otherwise. So I'm going to say, why not? And it's also a chance to work on your technique and all that, but like, do what you need to do. I'm going to suggest very strongly that you try not to, have to refer to your script in any way. Sometimes auditions come up very quickly. Sometimes they're so quickly that you have to really throw it together. And my suggestion is, if you cannot commit the whole thing to memory, if you're that pushed for time, do your actor work, figure out what's going on in that scene. Be prepared to make whatever that is happen in that scene. And try to memorize the first page. Try to get it down. Try to be familiar with the whole thing, obviously very familiar. But if you're not 100% off book, try to make sure the first page is down cold and that you can start strong. Because remember, the only thing they're going to see is that tape. That's it. So if you manage to engage them in the first minute of your audition, and they see you, they're pulled into what you're doing, then if you have to glance down at your page and come back for the remainder of the audition, they're going to be more forgiving. If you open by going down and up and down and up, it's almost impossible to really connect with an actor on tape who's doing that. There has to be a continuity of what you started out to do, and now we're watching you do it, or at least trying to do it, because the other character, as I said before, is going to get in your way. And again, I strongly recommend that you be on the lookout for that thing that goes wrong. I've auditioned for, and I'm going to say this frankly, some truly rotten material in my life. Not very often. Most of the time, if something is being produced, it's because it's good, But I've been on a few things that weren't so good, or I should say, I've auditioned for some things that weren't so good, and both in theater and in TV and film, and where I got the sides, and I had no idea what was going on, really. Like, it didn't really make sense. And I thought, okay, if I'm going to go in and audition, and especially if it's on tape, so it may be sitting around on somebody's computer, I want to make sure that I figure it out, that I figure out what I believe this is about. I'm going to decide that it's about something. I'm going to decide who I'm talking to. I'm going to decide what the relationship is. I'm going to decide what goes wrong here so that they can see me be a good actor. Because that's what good actors do. They understand what's going on in the scene and they make it happen. Now, while I'm on this subject of making it happen, let me just very quickly, I'm going to wrap up really fast because we got to take some questions. And I'm sorry, I think I went a little bit over. But one of the best ways I know to give a good audition is to connect pretty deeply with the reader. And the best way I know to do that is to look at that person and say, this character has the capacity to change my future. Like this day, this moment in time, whatever this argument or discussion or negotiation or whatever this encounter is, my future will probably change as a result of it. And so therefore, this has got to work. Like whatever this is, I've got to try to make this go my way, or else who knows what's happened? Who knows what will happen then? So just that alone, to say this person can change things, they command my attention. I must listen to them. I must be attentive. I must watch the slightest little thing that happens with them, so that I can go somewhere. I can move to some different place in that scene. I can try something new. Now, the other thing is sometimes, whether I'm in an audition room or whether I'm self-taping, and I will cast that role with somebody that I know, either somebody I know in life that I have strong feelings about one way or the other, or I can also use an actor. I can go in and say, I'm playing this scene with Meryl Streep today, or I'm playing this scene with Morgan Freeman or Viola Davis or any other extraordinary actor out there. And when I put that person in my mind in that role, I'm telling you, it goes a lot better because I'm on my game. I'm not going to look like a dummy in front of one of those incredible actors. I'm going to be on my game in that. And the reason I say this is because our craft is our imagination. And I believe that the thing that will get you hired as an artist is the quality of your imagination and your ability to access it, your ability to go, I can go there. I can do that. Some people say, isn't that kind of like difficult to do? That sort of imagining some other person, some really huge person there, some huge actor or some terribly important person. And I say to you, well, have you ever played a scene where you had to look out a window and see something? Most of us have. And chances are that thing we're supposed to see is not really there. But yet we see it because it's part of the craft. So the same thing is possible in creating an atmosphere that's going to benefit you in your audition. So there's a much more I'd like to talk about, but I'm starting to run out of time. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over now and ask for some of the questions that you guys have sent in. I think some in advance and some came in on the chat or something. And that was a lot of talking. I hope that was helpful.
David, you were awesome. You were actually, if it was an audition, you were very authentic. It was great. I have to tell you, and I listen to these all the time. I really appreciate your point of view on it. And we do have questions that came in.
Great.
There's one that came in, and I'm going to expand on it a little bit because I think it's a great question. Sure. Again, as you said, David, it's just your opinion, and it's, there's no right answer, but I would love your perspective on it. It says, what are the steps you take to prepare for an audition if you don't have anyone to read with until the actual day? I want to extend that. What if because we're in this COVID situation, how would you handle an audition when you don't have a reader?
Well, that's a tough one. I'm going to tell you, if I really seriously couldn't find anybody, I mean, the beauty now of Zoom is you usually can find somebody. What was the problem in the old days was finding a human being that could come over to your house, or you had to go to their house, or whatever had to happen. Now, who cares? We can all do this, without putting our pants on now. Usually I can find somebody who will Zoom with me. Even if it's somebody who's not an actor, that's okay. I just need somebody to be there. Now, if I can't do it, this hasn't happened to me yet, but I have seen somebody's audition that was in that dilemma, and they found a way to convert the scene into a monologue. Oh. And I have to say, they did a really good job, because what I believed when I saw it was that they were talking to a real person. They seemed to be like adjusting their monologue to whatever was going on that person's face. Like, okay, let me just start again, or hold on. Let me just finish what I'm saying. There seemed to be a real person who was like trying to break in or trying to sort of say what they were going to say. And this actor had adapted it. And if I was up against the wall, that's what I would do. But I would try hard to get a person, because there's nothing quite as great as a real person.
Right.
That's what the art of this is about, real people.
And so when you're going, if they're doing it self-tape with their phone, right, and it's mounted, they could have the computer next door to it with a Zoom.
That's how I do it. Yeah. All of my self-tapes right now are, my reader is on Zoom, and then I have my phone here, and it's a little like I have to favor the phone. The tape is what I have to preserve. So sometimes I can't get an eye line that really works with Zoom and the phone. So sometimes I have to play to a Post-it, literally a Post-it. Right. But it can be done. It's not impossible. It can be done.
That's great. Great information, because I know people are really challenged with that. Rebecca, you want to do the next one?
Yeah, I'm curious. We had a lot of questions. People find you to be inspired. I know when you presented in Los Angeles and New York, we got a lot of notes about how inspiring you are. What inspires you in these really challenging times in our industry? This person wants to know, can you share any experience or story that's helped you stay inspired, keeps your spirits lifted, keeps you in the mix? Go ahead.
I can. It's pretty lofty. So this may be a little too, airy-fairy for some people. But I'm just this happened to me, and it's actually in my book. It's like the closing chapter of my book, which is why I do it. Pardon me, my allergies are nuts, and now I'm probably going to start crying when I tell this story, but I'm going to try to make it, I'll try to hold it together. Years ago, I was on Boston Legal for a while, and in this incredible arc, it changed my whole world, that moment. And I was for 15 minutes famous while I was on that show. And I couldn't go through an airport or go to the grocery store or go anywhere without somebody going, "Oh my God, hello." And I discovered that, that was just a little taste of it, that being like recognizable is not the greatest thing when you're just trying to schlep into the grocery store and get out. And so I was kind of getting used to it. It'd been going on for about a year. And one day I was in the grocery store and I saw this woman following me. And finally she kind of crept up on me, and I thought, okay, here it goes. She's going to ask me what it's like to work with William Shatner. I'm going to say it's great. End of story. But anyway, she's crept up and she said, "Are you an actor?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And she said, "I know you from somewhere." And I said, "Okay, but Boston Legal? You ever watch Boston Legal?" "No, I never watched that show." "What else have you been on?" And I said, "I don't know. You ever watch Criminal Minds?" "No, I hate that show." "What else have you been on?" And it was like death by resume. And finally, I said, I don't know. I don't know where you saw me. I just, I've done some things that, but, thanks for recognizing me. I appreciate it." And all of a sudden she said, "Were you in A Midsummer Night's Dream in Buffalo, New York in 1986?
Wow.
And I said, "I was." And she proceeded to describe the scene, which was a very funny scene, and what I had done in the scene and all that. And she said, "I can't tell you how many times in the last 25 years that I have laughed myself to sleep thinking about that." And it was the most kind of mind-blowing, kind of spiritual moment I've ever had as an artist. Because the truth is, if we do our job well, wherever we do it, whether it's in front of, 20 million people, or whether it's in a church basement with 4 people in the audience, if we do it well and bring some truth into the room, people recognize that. They know truth when they see it, and it sticks with them. And somebody in that audience is going to remember that moment till the day they die. And I think that makes what we do kind of profound. And there are days when I get as sick of show business as everybody else does. Believe you me. But I believe that what we do is that we're kind of mental health workers in a way. Like if I sit around and don't act for a really long time, I get a little nutty. I'm sure you'd never guess that about me, but I occasionally get a little wound up. And I think that when I do my work well, people see a little bit of, or when any of us do our work well, not just me, they see a little bit of themselves in that work. And then they don't feel as lonely in life, because we tend to think it's just us, when in fact, there's a lot we share. So that is a big spiritual answer for it. My second shorter answer is, I just think it's a joyous thing to do. If you like solving puzzles, because that's every time it's a new puzzle, and I do, it's just a joyous thing to do. And I'm sorry about all the complications. I don't have an answer for that, but it's kind of a swell thing to do with your life as long as it gives you joy.
You know what's so great about that answer is it actually speaks to when you said the greatest audition is the one you can really enjoy. And it clearly, you enjoy life in your work. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. Great message. Really great. You're infectious. So I'm going back and forth.
Don't call me that at this time in history.
Oh yeah. You're healing. So I'm going to go back to a little bit of the technique stuff, because I think people are feeling challenged with being successful in terms of this moment in time, at all times, but during this, being on Zoom. So what do you think? You talked about knowing your script, but sometimes you have such long, exposition, such long, many pages, and it becomes difficult. And again, it is a different thing than being in the room when you can refer back sometimes back and forth to the script. How do you handle that moment? Not enough time to memorize. It's quite long.
Right. It's gonna depend on what it is. I sometimes audition because I wear glasses. I sometimes audition for like experts on things, and which is not really who I am. But and I don't have time to go to medical school or law school before we shoot this. So I tend to, if there's a lot of stuff that's kind of going to be unlikely for me to like get that all in my mouth and say it in the right order and pronounce it correctly and all that, I will figure out some way, like a clipboard, a file, something that I'm going to make. I'm going to make it work for the scene. I'm going to reference it when I need it, but I'm going to make it part of the scene so that if I am talking to you about it and you're asking about it or you're looking for my consultation or whatever, I'm going to treat that in some way. Like when I reference it, it's like, don't you even know what this is? This is a blah, 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 you know, whatever the jargon is, but I'm going to make it into something so that I have something to act while I'm doing it.
Right.
I had a job a few years ago that it kind of fell in my lap, and it was not super interesting. And I had to, I should have said that ahead of time, but anyway, I was playing somebody that had a little bit of jargon to do, and I thought, how am I going to do this? Because this is really kind of boring. I'm bored by it. And I thought, okay, I'm going to play this guy as if this is his last day on the job. And I'm going to do a good job. I'm not going to let anybody know this is my last day. And so I had something to do in the scene. I was like, I'm happy to help you with that. Sure, let's do that. Here's the answer to your problem. But underneath that was, I'm out in like an hour, I'm out of here. And it gave me something to do. It gave me something to push against because I didn't want anybody to see that. And you can, that's the beauty of acting, is you can make stuff interesting. You can't change it. You can't rewrite it and turn it into something it's not. You got to serve it. You got to, you know, it's got to move the plot. But there's stuff you can do that will bring you to life. They'll give you something fun to do. Yeah,
you have to be able to find it in the words that are given to you. That's very good. Rebecca, do you want to go on?
Yeah, we have some members because they, you know, actors do film, TV, theater, everything. And this actor wants to know if monologues are still ever used in the audition process. And if so, how can they find a modern monologue that is good?
Well, monologues, to my knowledge, are not so much used in when you're auditioning for a specific role. I mean, I guess unless that's part of the audition, unless the character has it, like if it's a play and the character has a monologue, then I guess, yeah, that'd be part of the audition. But mostly I think what people are talking about are general audition monologues. And it's not done a lot anymore, mostly because casting directors don't really have the time for general auditions much anymore. Sometimes they do. And sometimes in EPAs in New York, which are equity principal auditions for stage, sometimes there'll be something where it's bringing a monologue. And it's handy when you're a young actor to have something like that. So just in case you are sitting in some agent's office and the agent says, do you have a monologue? The answer is yes. Finding those monologues, I will tell you that theater tends to have better monologues than television and film does. Because television and film monologues are pretty short. And you want something that gives you a chance to go somewhere. So I'd say that's the first answer, is to look in theater. You got to find something that fits you, which is the challenge, which is why I would say, look and keep looking. If you want that, if you feel like you're going to need that in your work, then keep looking, because it's like a piece of clothing. It has to fit you in every way. It's got to fit your personality. It's got to fit your type, and you have to love doing it. Because when they pull that on you in an agent's office, hey, just do a little acting for us in the middle of your interview and sitting in somebody's office, like you got to like love to do that monologue so that you can step into it in some way. And when I was a young man, we did that a lot, but I think except for young actors who are just coming in, I'm not so much anymore, at least not for paying gigs so much.
Yeah, and not so much for TV and film. You're right, stage is different, but it's a good question though. So tell us, you know, one of the things when people are now doing the self-tapes, you know, they want to get you, like you said, you know, you can spend an hour. You just did that audition. You said, I had like 5-6 great takes there, right? But that's not what you should be sending in. How many takes, when people want to know, you know, what they need to send in other than the proper slate or whatever, how many takes would you say is appropriate?
I'm gonna answer this one from the point of view of a casting director, because I know as an artist, as an actor, and I respect actors, and I respect the stuff that we do and the different takes we have and how we have questions, and it could be this way, it could be that way. I completely get that, but the difficulty is this piece of tape is for a professional purpose. It's not for an artistic purpose, and the casting director wants to see your best take. And they really don't want to see two, because if that turns into like everybody sitting in two, then the time they were going to spend looking at tape just doubled. They don't want that. They want you to make this decision. This is my strongest suit. This is the card I'm playing. Here you go. Now, I am truly sorry that we are all isolated and the casting directors are not able to give us direct feedback and say, hey, I like this because you changed that. Unfortunately, at this juncture, that doesn't exist. So we have to go on our own judgment, or if we are lucky enough to have people around who can give us feedback before we make that submission, great. Like if you've got a friend who'll look at a couple of different takes and if you're confused, do it. But generally speaking, I don't think they want it. I think they want you to make that decision. This is the best representation of my work. I'm the most alive in this. I am doing the scene as written. I seem to be interacting with somebody. I'm doing what this character is doing for real. I'm not acting it. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. That's my take on it, is I would send one.
Great. Rebecca?
Yeah. This member asks, what is the best way to approach an action moment like a kiss, fisticuffs, other actions that are limited in an audition situation?
I got to tell you, this is what a pain in the ass this is. I know what you're talking about. I once had to be shot and like with a gun and fall to the ground and crawl across the floor while acting in this scene. And I feel you when it's that kind of stuff. I think that the best advice I can give you is that I don't think I would go for a kiss. If you, I mean, one thing that when I'm now having to teach acting on Zoom, and I advise people, see if I'm going to do this way, I guess. If you have to kiss somebody, do this. Like to go off screen, just take your face off screen. And when your face comes back, it has to be different because somebody kissed you. You know, that's the challenge of it. And I know that that's not organic, but you can do it. Believe me, you can do it. And if it's something like a gun, you know, guns are such a loaded issue right now. I don't know that I would pull a gun even in a taped audition. And I've used my cell phone for many object, and if need be, if I have to have something in my hand, I'll do that. When you're dealing with multiple characters where there's more than one person who is talking to you, I think it is very helpful if you don't really have to do anything other than use your eyes to sort of pin those two people, person one here, person two there, and that you change when you talk to those two people. If one of them is your boss and the other one is this kind of annoying codependent coworker, your tone of voice is going to change when you speak to those people. Just make sure that you change when you're talking to them. And that's about the best anyone can expect us to do. That's a very hard thing. I would say the more takes, the better on those kind of things, because just the more you're able to kind of swiftly make that shift and believe it for yourself, the better.
I think it speaks to what you said earlier too, David. It's clear decisions, right? Really make choices, because if you do that, you can see those choices, know who you're talking to. So that's great feedback. Another question was, somebody said, and this is something we've all experienced, it's you do get to do extra tapes when you Zoom, so you might not always show it, but this can happen even when you go into work. I find even for a simple 1 or 2 line co-star audition, I'm relaxed and calm up until I enter the room. And at that point, my heart rate goes crazy. Are there techniques I could use to stay calm and not feel that anxiety?
I think that there are. I think that's one of the hardest things in the world to audition for, is something that small. And the people, when I've been involved in casting, and we've had to cast those kind of roles, it almost always, when we're talking about people, they'll say, you know what, I like that guy, or I like that young woman. Well, I mean, it comes down to like this kind of, oh, I like them in some way. And I'll tell you what I think that means, is it means when we looked at that tape, it seemed like this person was in the middle of their day, whatever they were doing. They happened to be sort of like walking by or having to turn around, and somebody said, "Hey, can you tell me, where the nearest police station is or whatever?" And they're like, "Well, it's over there." And then they kind of just went on with their life after that. And in a weird way, I can tell you, this is something else that I think about sometimes when I audition, especially if the parameters are odd, like there's not a lot of talking, and I think I pretend like I'm a star. And I pretend like all eyes are on me because I'm filling the room with my starriness. And even if it's a small thing, who's not going to look at me? Of course they're going to look at me. And of course, whatever I'm thinking or feeling is going to be important, even if it's only that long. And it helps. And again, things like if I'm playing the waiter or whatever, or the bartender or whatever the deal is, and I can always do things like what I was talking about with that other job where I pretended like it was my last day. I can always have on my face, I have a splitting headache, but I'm still going to help you. I'm not going to indicate that. I'm not going to go, "Oh, I have a splitting headache." I'm just going to, like I would in real life, "I have a splitting headache. What can I do for you?" Or I'm going to have, maybe I think that you're the hottest thing I've ever seen. And that may be in my head, but I'm not going to show it because I'll get fired. But it's in my head, and it's going to connect me to you in some way. And there's something else going on besides, "Can I help you?"
Right.
Little things like that. It's just a little moment of life. And the more relaxed people are, and the more they seem to, not just be there to say, "There's the restroom," or whatever the answer is, when they actually seem to have a life of their own, they're very appealing, even if it's only that much time.
Right. And knowing those internal details can help you from being nervous because you have something to focus on. That's great. Rebecca?
Yeah,
I kind of think, honestly, anytime, I'm going to just tag on that one second, Rebecca, before you come in, is I think that for me, I don't do any acting anywhere unless I have something to push against. Like, I want something. If it's not going to be another actor, I'm going to create something that's a little bit of a problem, because otherwise I don't want to sit there and think, "Oh, I'm acting. Oh, I'm acting. Now it's my line. Now it's your line. Now it's my line." I want something to do, because that's how we live. We do things all the time without even really thinking about them. Anyway, sorry.
No, good point.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I think we're just in a time where there's a lot more anxiety for everybody. So every technique and tool, we have sort of an opposite question, because one of our members says that I'm sometimes given feedback that my audition could use a little more pop or juice to it. And they want to know if you have any advice for them who they might be slightly overcommitted to naturalism, is what this performer was saying. What do you say to that,
Okay.
David?
I have a response to that. I've been doing some teaching, which I love doing. I love teaching. I love working with young performers, and also performers who are just coming back to sort of tune up. I love it. It's really fun. And certainly with the young performers, I know that, we're pursuing truth. I want to be real. And which is great, except that sometimes how we would do it in real life, in my life or in your life or whatever, is not necessarily how this character is going to do it. And that as much as I want to be an artist and adhere to all those great Stanislavski things, as I mentioned before, I'm in the entertainment business. And this scene has got to be entertaining. And it's got to be entertaining because the stakes are high. And so my actions, again, coming back to, if this scene is going to determine something about my future, I want to be invested in the outcome, not in my performance. I want to be invested in how is the ship sinking? Because if it is, I gotta bail this water out, and I gotta save my ass. And whatever it is, there is usually, like, scenes are just not written about unimportant days in people's lives. They're just not. There's some, it may seem kind of unimportant initially, but then you very quickly see that there's something bigger boiling under it. And that's the fun part about it. But it does have to be important. It has to be really important. It's called drama for a reason. There's gotta be something that goes wrong, and it's gotta be clear, and you gotta care about its outcome.
You're so good. I have so many questions, but we're gonna be wrapping up. I'm just gonna ask you one more question. I want to ask more, but I'm gonna do one. it's because I hear this from members all over the country. And, we talked about this a little earlier before we started. So I know this is all based on your opinion. It's not necessarily an answer, the absolute answer, but, we do have people from all over the country listening right now when they go into auditions. And a lot of times they might be, they might not have in their area the casting director. They don't know where they're sending out for work. And so what they want to know is, what is the best way to send information to casting directors without an audition invitation? So people want to be able to, have the opportunity, but don't always know how to.
Yeah. It's always, in the pre-COVID, most people had a mail address to send something to them. Some casting directors even had a website that had a general mailbox in it that you could send something to, at least the assistant or the associate might see it. And maybe, who knows, maybe forward it on. You never know what's going to happen. Any attempt to reach anybody in the casting business is sort of like putting a message in a bottle and throwing it out to sea, because any communication that we're having with that group of.
I think we're losing. Is that me or is that David?
I lost him too.
I think David froze. Yeah.
Well,
no.
I guess that's okay, because if he's not here right now, it was the full spectrum of a great conversation. David, if you're able to hear me at all, we loved having you. I think that we did talk about this earlier, and he said there's just no necessarily right way to do it. You can go and, reach out. You could look on, Twitter or whatever. Maybe there's a way to reach them, but you might have to be creative, and however you get there, we wish for everybody to do well. It's wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. Can you hear me? We can't hear you, David. You're muted. Can you unmute yourself? He's laughing.
The Zoomiverse. There you go. Unmute yourself, David.
Now?
Yeah, there you go.
I am so sorry. I was, telling everybody.
No, it's not your fault. This is our Zoom world. I have the phone ringing all the time. It's good.
No, it happens with some regularity. So anyway, in conclusion, what I just said when we were off the air was everything you need to know to be hugely successful. But I'll sum it up by saying that in the world of casting, to come back, because that is important, there isn't at the moment. Please do understand that, like everybody else in the world, this is a new territory. Nobody quite understands it, and there's no real template yet. So I think, from what I understand with the casting directors that I have a cordial relationship with, some people are stopping in their office and picking up their mail. Some people are not. Some people are a little more easily accessible on social media and so forth. I think that casting directors probably most appreciate it when you are offering them something they can see past just your picture and resume, especially in television and film. If there's a clip, and again, clip, it does not have to be 5 minutes of you in a scene. A clip is fine. If you think about the Academy Awards, when they say so-and-so nominated for this award, and there's like a little teeny clip, that's only a few seconds, and you can see that actor can act. So keep that in mind. If you have a calling card of sorts that you want to try to get people to look at, respect the fact that they're professionals. They know when somebody can act. So give them a little piece of tape that they can see that in, or let them know if there's something you are doing that's fun or interesting, or what, by all means, but try to avoid going, hire me, see me, meet me, audition me. Try to offer something that sets you apart, because it's a free sample of what you do. That's going to land better if that opportunity comes up. I believe that there's still online casting workshops that are available, and I know people have mixed feelings about that. But if you are ready, if you are a trained enough actor that you can make something happen in the room, something truthful happen in the room, you'll meet somebody who has a job in a casting office, and I have seen that work, and that's just kind of a new reality. But I believe those now do exist on Zoom, casting workshops that you're going to be reading some piece of material for them. But again, just keep one thing in mind about casting directors. They're people too. And they're also like you, a sensitive and artistic and perceptive person. So if you're talking to them, be genuine and be respectful of the fact that you are one of about 1 billion people who are trying to get their attention. And I'm not saying you have to shrink or apologize about contacting them. That's not, they're a professional. They understand that you're going to try to contact them. But do keep in mind, they're a human being. They got a dog, they got kids, they got a mortgage, just like you. So treat them like a human being, be respectful. But again, offer as opposed to ask.
David, you are wonderful. And I will say that we loved having you. I'm hoping that we'll be able to have you again. I think that one of the things that's a real takeaway is bring your human self. I love that. I will always hold that phrase close. Everybody I know who's been participating has really enjoyed this, who's had the opportunity to hear you today. And I want to say thank you to everybody for joining us today. It's been really a wonderful, wonderful moment. Thank you for joining the President's Task Force on Education, Outreach, and Engagement. If you have not already, while you're here, please, 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 please subscribe to SAG-AFTRA's YouTube channel, get updates on the great content that we've been able to post because of our guests, such as David. We have a lot of more exciting events coming up down the pipeline, and hopefully they will all be of service to you and what you need. So with that, have a wonderful day and see you soon.
Can I throw in one last thing?
Yes,
Is there
David.
time? Great. Okay. I usually do this when I do it live, and I'm not going to risk doing it here on the Zoom audience, but I like being of service to people when I can. And I do these from time to time. And I also answer emails when I can. I'm going to give you my email, and it's super easy. It's my name at Gmail. It's David Dean Bottrell at Gmail. It's that easy. 2 T's, 2 L's at Gmail. If I can be of help to you, I'm happy to give you a fast, short answer. I like shorter questions better than longer ones, but I'm happy to help if I can.
You're wonderful. Thank you for your time. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Pam. Thank you to everybody who's been a part of this, and we will see you next time.